right, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I am happy to be here with you on Easter Sunday. That's right, it is April 4th, and we're going to have a good day. And I hope everyone is having a great day. Whether you celebrate Easter or some other religion or none whatsoever, I hope everyone is having a day that is filled with warmth and joy, family and friends, that you're having a great time. And it looks like at the moment we are up on all of the social media systems from DLive to Twitter to Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. And we look to be up on everything, so I hope everyone's going to have a great time. I know many people are with their families right now. They're having an early dinner or just out and about, perhaps at religious services, so I hope you're going to be well. For those who are finding this for the first time, whether live or afterwards, we welcome you and thank you for joining us here. We do long-form political commentary on this show, and we hope that you're going to enjoy this because every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we reach out to the world to allow you to speak to us directly about the issues that matter to you. This is about free speech and your conversation with us. You can reach us on Twitter and chats, tweets and chats, or you can call into the show at 607-242-1582. So let's get into this. And very simply, we don't talk a lot about sports and entertainment usually on the program. This week we are. There is a lot going on, and the whole theme is, of course, the recipe of self-destruction that we are seeing enacted throughout the United States right now and being exported around the world, in particular in the United Kingdom and our friends across the pond. Let's look at this because this is really scary, because we are watching politics invade every aspect of our lives, and in particular, we're talking about the gender identity politics, the racism and the separation of individuals, changing you and me from being a human being into being merely a skin tone, a gender, a category on a checklist, and we have only the worth of that checklist on any given day. That is terrifying. That destroys society. That destroys our nation, our self-worth. And that's a problem, I think. You may disagree. You may say, Mike, well, you just don't get it. I think I do. And let's take a look at this. Let's have this conversation. And again, I want to hear what you have to say about this. But let's start off talking about U.S. women's soccer. Now, this is something that we have talked about before on this program. You may recall, we've talked about when the U.S. women's team stomped on the United States flag. To be very clear, the last Women's World Cup, the United States women's soccer team, led by Rapinoe, stepped all over the flag on purpose. They dragged it through the ground and they stepped on it. We showed the video of that. It is clear and true. Later this year, or rather earlier this year, on March 15th, we saw that U.S. women's soccer was beginning to gain a lot of attention back on March 15th. And we couldn't isolate exactly what it was. And we had to ask the question, do they deserve a second chance? Well, we have now found out why they were getting all the attention. It's because U.S. women's soccer, along with Joe Biden, appeared on March 28th to tell the American people, hey, women deserve equal pay. Well, that's a very interesting argument. That's the lawsuit that U.S. women's soccer put out. That they said, hey, we're going to get equal pay for playing a game. We are the champions in the world for women's soccer. Why don't we get paid as much as the men? And they had a lawsuit. Fact is, they do get equal pay. In fact, they get more than equal pay. And in fact, they lost their lawsuit for a couple of reasons, one of them being they do get equal pay. So you've been lied to as the American people. Now, we don't normally cover a lot of sports. So we looked out and said, well, maybe we don't understand the issue. Maybe we're not getting it. No problem. We reached out and we found Nate the lawyer, as you can see here, And we looked at his coverage on this, and I just want to play a little part of that so you can see what the issue is.
What did this look like in actual salary? So come to find out, the women actually earned more money than the men in total pay, but also on a per game basis. The men's national team are actually the ones being underpaid based on the numbers. And one of the more interesting pieces about this is if the teams switch contracts, the women's national team would have gotten paid more under the men's deal, but the men's national team would have also been paid more under the women's deal. Now, after the judge threw out this lawsuit, Joe Biden wrote this: to the women's U.S. national team, don't give up the fight, this is not over. And to U.S. soccer, equal pay now, or else when I'm president, you can go elsewhere for World Cup funding.
Now, think about this. The president, Joe Biden, and the Biden administration has just said, well, it's unfair. This is horrible. You're women and you're being discriminated against. And hi, chicks. It's good to see you, and thank you for joining us today. So the United States president said that women are not being treated right. And this is the example. The U.S. women's soccer team. How dare they not be treated equally for playing a game and being exceptional? Except they got paid more. Except they were given the opportunity to get paid in the same exact structure as the men, and they rejected it, which was thrown out of court because they had the choice. They threw it out, and they got paid more money. But yet somehow, because they're women, we now hear Biden administration saying, well, they were oppressed. What are you talking about? How can you be oppressed and say that I'm not getting equal pay when you're getting more money? Not equal, more. And what they were suing for wasn't to get equal pay, it was to get even more money than they already were making. This is the problem of putting politics into sports. When we start losing perspective on what's going on, where we start mixing in these stupid ideas that have no place in our sports, and then we see that it's being abused. The entire concept is an abuse used to manipulate us. They're using U.S. women's soccer to manipulate you to believe, well, it's unfair. Women are being treated unfairly. And this example tells you that's not true. That in fact, they're being treated with an advantage that they negotiated themselves. And in fact, if things were to be fair, the men should be the ones suing because they make less money and they have a worse deal than the women's team does. Jason joins us. Hello, Jason. Thank you for joining us on this Easter, as well as Hot Chicks. Jason says, wait, for the men in mini skirt, replace them. Wait for the men in the mini skirt and replace them. If you're talking about the transgender question, again, another issue where we're seeing politics enter into the realm of sports and destroy our society, taking away our entertainment and adding in politics where it doesn't belong. Again, you have that same issue. And I think there's a problem here. And again, that problem, that recipe for self-destruction comes back to we are confusing the principles at the core that are important. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe I don't understand it. But when I see Joe Biden going on to the national stage and actually an international stage and saying these women are being treated unfairly when they're being treated with an advantage, and that's factually documented. It's absolutely correct and true to say women's soccer is doing better than the men financially, then where's the argument? Michael Bowie mentions, I heard a great quote this week by a young black man when asked if he thought America was racist. He said, racism is a smokescreen. And the answer is, it's true. Racism, sexism, trans, all of the isms and ists are truly a smokescreen, and they are destructive at their core because they are dehumanizing each and every one of us. And that's one of the things that is the recipe of self-destruction. We are destroying our nation and the foundation of our nation, and we are exporting it around the world because we are dehumanizing each other. You're no longer an individual. Michael, Jason, Hot Chicks, you're no longer human beings and individuals. You are a category. You're a male, straight, or gay. You're black or white. You're Islamic or Christian or whatever religion. You're just a category. And some of those categories are more important than other categories. And that's scary. We should be terrified. We should be thinking, there's a problem with that. Because human beings are individuals, not categories. Because categories don't think. Categories are cows. And I don't like to think of the human beings as cows. I don't think of my fellow Americans, well, not entirely as cows. To be fair, when you're doing things like just voting because I've said I'm Republican or I'm Democrat or I'm Libertarian, if you're just going straight down the line, not thinking and not knowing anything about what's going on, that's a little bit more like cattle, and that's scary. But honestly, you're still a human being. You're still an individual. And when you go and have a conversation, you're not, well, I'm black, so the response I have to give is just, well, here's the black answer. This is what black people must say. This is what black people must do. Like Michael has mentioned, it's a smokescreen. And it's the way that some people are looking to gain power over everyone else by using this excuse. Whether it's the gender pay gap, by using examples of people who have a superior position, or whether it's something like, again, sticking with sports. How about Charles Barkley, who had a wonderful comment, Larry O'Connor, who is a blue check on Twitter, and he does KABC radio. He's a columnist at townhall.com, and he's mentioning on here that Charles Barkley condemned both Republicans and Democrats for purposefully dividing us along racial lines. Yet, have you noticed something? Conservatives have cheered him. Those on the left either criticize him or say nothing, and he called out both parties. Now, if you're wondering, what are we talking about here? We're talking about this. Charles Barkley breaking it down, and here's the actual video of what he said.
Shared that news, how painful it was.
Yeah, but the one thing I took out of that piece was, man, I think most white people and black people are great people. I really believe that in my heart. But I think our system is set up where our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, are designed to make us not like each other so they can keep their grasp of money and power. They divide and conquer. I truly believe in my heart most white people and black people are awesome people, but we're so stupid following our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. And their only job is, hey, let's make these people not like each other. We don't live in their neighborhoods. We're all got money. Let's make the whites and blacks not like each other. Let's make rich people and poor people not like each other. Let's scramble the middle class. I truly believe that in my heart.
Okay, and I think that Charles Barkley called it perfectly. And this is an example of taking the politics out of the sports, taking it out of our movies, our TV shows, our entertainment, our comic books. It's taking it away and saying, no, you know what? We can just enjoy this together. We don't have to divide ourselves. We don't have to destroy each other. We don't have to dehumanize each other by putting us all into categories. We can just be people. And if we recognize that there are politicians, there are elected officials, there are people who are in politics whose job is to divide us because it's beneficial. It gives a reason for their existence and their job and the money they make. If we understand that, then we can be ahead of this game. Because you don't see the autonomous zones in Minneapolis. You don't see it in Portland. You don't see it attempted in Atlanta and New York City. If everyone understands, you know what, we're Americans. And we all believe in the same system. We want freedom. We want the ability to live good lives. And we have the highest quality of life in the world. And we can always make that better, but we don't have to destroy each other to do that. And yet, instead, what we get is things like Rapinoe with the U.S. women's team trying to take us down. We have Joe Biden trying to take us down. We have Major League Baseball and Delta and the NBA and NFL trying to separate us, saying, well, you're black, so you have a special category. You're a woman, so you're a special category. You're gay or trans or whatever. You're a special category. You have to be treated in a special way. And I think that's horrible because at its core, it is self-destructive. It is saying, well, we can't have a nation of people. We have a nation of categories. And some of those categories are incapable of being able to take care of themselves. They're incapable of being able to succeed. And they need a government with the right leaders to go out and take care of them because they can't do it themselves. I mean, you want to understand what I mean by that? Think about it. In Georgia, the question is, with the Georgia new voting laws in Georgia, to ensure that everyone has a vote and that that vote is secure, which is a question that has come out of 2020. They require that a person provides ID, which is not a horrible, strange, crazy idea. You want to go and get a pack of cigarettes? You need ID. You want to get on a plane? You need an ID. These are simple things. You want to drive a car? You need an ID. So this is not a lot to ask for. But if you look at some of the media that's out there, they have said that, well, you know what? Black people can't do that. They can't do that. And it's unfair because they don't have an ID, because they can't afford a free, in many parts of the country, IDs are free. In many parts of the country, IDs cost the same thing that it costs to get a meal at McDonald's. It costs the same as to go to the movies. It costs the same as to get a pizza delivered to your house. And yet black people are not able, they can't afford that. Even though they afford cigarettes, beers, going out to the movies, having a meal out for dinner, having pizza delivered to their home. They can afford all those other things, but getting an ID, that is beyond them. They can't do that. It's too much involved. It costs too much money. They just can't do it. How are you not saying in that statement that black people are inferior and therefore need the government to step in and save them and to protect them, to do things because they can't do it themselves? It is, again, that category that they're just a category. They're a category that happens to be inferior. And the government needs to step in and help them, even though people can do this for themselves. Jason mentions the COVID passport. What would black people do? Well, again, if you're going by New York State, and I'm going to be getting to that because it is on the list for today, but again, it's the same idea. You want to get a COVID vaccination? You need ID. Is this a crazy idea? Is this horrible? No. Why is this so detrimental? Because someone says we need a way to separate people and to make you say, well, Republicans are evil and white people are evil and these other people are evil and you need me to stand up for you so that you will be taken care of because you can't do it for yourself. That is a recipe of self-destruction. It destroys the nation because you cannot have a nation that hates itself and hates its own people. And we're being told that from women's national soccer to the NBA to the NFL to Major League Baseball, we have these institutions. These are our recreations. These are our escapes. And they are reinforcing the fact, no, you're not equal, you're not good enough, and you need someone else to take care of you because you can't do it for yourself. I find that insulting, upsetting, and as un-American as possible. I mean, does that make sense? Am I not making sense on that? Because if I'm not, I'd like to hear the counter answer that says, well, Mike, you just don't understand. because, yeah, women are inferior to men, and that's why they don't get paid the same, even though they do get paid the same, because they don't work the same number of years. They don't work in the same careers. And often when they do, like in sports, like in women's soccer, they get paid more. These are the realities that are out there, although we've been told by people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that the truth doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. It doesn't matter about that because the emotion is what matters. And the emotion given to us by individuals who are profiting off of our division and our misery, they are the ones who are they're the ones with the emotion saying, this is what you should be feeling right now. And if you don't feel this, there's a problem with you. By the way, give me more money. I think that's a terrifying thought. I think that's an absolutely upsetting thought. And that's why I think that when Charles Barkley is there saying to us, no, this is the problem. The separation is the problem. The fact that we are demonizing people based on categories, whether that be political or intrinsic, like your color of skin, like your ideology, your religion, your gender, your sexual preference. When we see that, that's the danger. That's the problem. It's not that we have different capabilities and some people do better at this or the other thing. No, the problem is that people are tearing us apart for their benefit, usually political, often with monetary supplement. That's the problem. Hot Chicks mentions it's inferior but not subordinate. I don't agree with either. I don't think anyone should be subordinate. I don't think that we should allow our political leaders to make us subordinates to them. In the American system, a representative democracy, they answer to us. The 10th Amendment makes it clear. The Declaration of Independence makes it clear. We are the power of this government. But if you listen to politicians like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Anna Presley, Rashida Tlaib, if you listen to most of the leaders out there right now, they're telling you, well, you should be doing what we say. We've made the decision, you have to live with it. That's a problem. That is a massive problem. They're telling you, well, you have to go and get re-educated. You have to go out there and learn that white people are intrinsically evil and that Black people and people of color are intrinsically inferior. And that if you don't believe that, there's something wrong with you. If you say that people are just as good as each other, that they have their own ability to succeed or fail, that something is intrinsically wrong with you because you don't understand that they're not people, they're a category, and that category has a problem. Am I not summing up the situation properly? Is that not what we are being presented with right now? They're not using that wording, but that is the effect. That is what is happening, and we are seeing it as it is playing out in our sports, in our media right now. Whether you're looking at a movie like Star Wars or whether you're watching women's soccer, NBA, and now the Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball, which has now decided that baseball is going to become political, and they are going to punish the people of Georgia who elected officials and said, hey, we want to have this law in our state. And because we want this law in our state, Major League Baseball is saying, well, you made the wrong choice. We don't like it. We're going to punish you financially and with entertainment. Who gave Major League Baseball that right? Since when did anyone get elected into Major League Baseball? What laws did Major League Baseball present and create and have enacted? That's not their job. That's not what they're there for. They're there to entertain. Or maybe am I missing that? Did I misunderstand that somewhere? in the description of Major League Baseball, that there was a political element in there and that they are actually elected to their positions and therefore they're also deciding law. Michael Bowie mentions, we need more people like Charles Barkley speaking out. I wish Drew Brees had held his ground last year. You know what? I think Charles Barkley did a great job because he's not in sports currently. He is a commentator, and he is giving us a commentary. And I don't agree that sports figures should use their entertainment while they're in that field to espouse their personal political views. If you want to say something politically, you know what? Do it on your own time. Not when I want to watch Major League Baseball, not when I want to watch NBA, not when I want to watch World Cup or, the Super Bowl. That's not the moment. And I say that for the left, the right, and everyone in between. But I also say to Major League Baseball, you know what? It's not your job to tell us whether you like a law or not. Major League Baseball is a bunch of individuals. The teams in Georgia and those individuals living in Georgia have a right to vote for or against that law. And the legislators that passed that law or didn't pass that law. That is an individual consideration. It has nothing to do with Major League Baseball. Imagine if they said, and I'm going to get to your comment in a second, Jason, but imagine if the NBA, Major League Baseball, they decided that, you know what? We believe the First Amendment is wrong. You don't get the right to say what you want to say. And since you're doing that, we're going to punish you so that you can't go and watch our games. You would say, well, you're insane. That's not your choice. You don't get to tell me what I can and cannot say. Except, isn't that exactly what they're doing here? If it's ridiculous for them to say, you don't have a right to free speech, why is it different when they say, you don't have a right to pass a law in your state that the public had the right to choose? That they get to say, well, I don't agree. You don't get to do that. Where did they get that power? Jason mentions all corporations are kneeling to the BLM cancel culture. A lot of them are. And we need to call that out because that's not part of our lives. I'm not saying you can't believe in Black Lives Matter. And in fact, I do believe that concept because I'm Black, I'm Hispanic. I think all lives matter and that they should all be treated equally with equal weight. And that is what our system ideally does. But I don't believe that we should have a bias, which it is, and that we should be racist and sexist in trying to propel one category of people over another category of people. Because you're no longer thinking of them as people. You're thinking of them as categories. At that point, you're just a commodity. And I don't believe human beings are commodities. In many ways, it's very similar to slavery. And you're seeing groups like entertainment and sports that are saying, no, you just don't understand. You are a commodity. You know why it's so hypocritical and so terrible? I'll go to Steve McLaughlin, who is a somewhat notable commentator. He's worked with the Rensselaer County News and news media, and he says, so it's racist to require an ID to vote, but not to board a plane, buy a car, register a car, cash a check, open a bank account, apply for a loan, see the president, talk about the soft bigotry of low expectations, cut the BS. Why can't we say that to baseball? Because let's remember, to go and pick up the tickets and to say you want to go to the baseball game, you want to watch an MLB game, an NBA game, an NFL game, you want to go to see women's soccer, you got to remember that to be able to do that, you need an ID. Lest we all forget, you go to MLB to get your tickets, you need a picture ID. And yet, they're telling us, but you don't need an ID to vote. because that's political. And we have a political preference, and you have to feed into that political preference. You have to do as we say, because you no longer have a choice. You no longer have a voice. You are no longer an individual, you're a category. And that category is a commodity. And that commodity has to do what we say. That is a terrible thought. And that destroys nations. That destroys individuals. And there's a lot of ways to look at this because it's not just in our entertainment. As Tim Pool mentioned, the racist New York City demands that your papers in order to get a vaccine. Is that not racism? Isn't it fascism? Because that's what we're being told by the entertainment industry, that these things are absolutely a problem. To be able to get vaccinated, you have to have an ID, and that's horrible because IDs are un-American, that they are, well, what was it said by Joe Biden? It's Jim Crow on steroids. Jim Eagle, as he said. The same man who said that black people aren't capable of being able to go online to register and that they don't know how to use the internet. And that if you don't vote for him, you're not actually black because he gets to decide all of that for you. And now he and his colleagues are deciding what sports you can and cannot watch. Very shortly now, I expect that we're going to be told which sports are black sports, which sports are women's only sports, like men cannot watch them, which ones are for whites and which ones are for foreigners. We're going to separate all that because obviously you're not smart enough to decide and you don't know enough. And you know what? You have the wrong political ideology, so you can't watch this game anymore. How is that not self-destructive? How does that not destroy the nation? How is that not hurting America? We are supposed to be the melting pot of the world. We have millions of people legally and illegally trying to come into this nation every year. There are lines of tens of thousands of people looking to come here every year. And here we are telling them, well, no, if you want to be part of this nation, please understand that you don't count as an individual, you're just a category. And those categories have certain importances. Some are better than others. We're literally taking on the same ideas of other countries in the world that these people are escaping from. And it's the worst parts of the rest of the world that we're adopting here and saying, you have to live by it. You have to do that. And that's why we have seen soccer, Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA. We have watched sports plummet, including, don't leave out NASCAR because it's happened there too. And we have watched every time the get woke ideology has slipped in to our entertainment and in our lives, people reject it massively, and it has failed because we intrinsically understand they're commoditizing us. They're not treating us like human beings, and we're not going to reward being made into things that have no animus, that have no choice, that are just there to do what they're told. In essence, being told you are a slave and you must do this because you have no choice, because you are inferior. And I reject that. I reject that with the totality of what I am. But again, I will ask everyone watching this, whether you're live or in video, and tell me, am I misunderstanding it? Am I getting this wrong? Does this not make sense? Have I made an illogical conclusion here? Have I jumped the gun? Is this not a recipe for self-destruction, the destruction of the United States in the long term, as we teach our children to hate one another, to value each other based on the birth, the way they were born, like the color of their skin? I mean, Is that not destructive? Can any nation exist with that kind of ideology behind it? It's a very important question, I think. And it's something that we have to realize and address. That's not to say that we can't make America better. It's not to say that we can't always strive for equality of opportunity. It's not to say that we can't be a more unified nation, but it also absolutely means that we must understand that we are individuals and that individuals have rights and differences, and that we are not just some checklist of intrinsic things: male, black, white, this religion, this sex, gender, whatever. At least that's what I'm thinking. Michael Bowie mentions, Epoch News is reporting that the Major League Baseball extended their contract with the Chinese communist media giant Tencent the day before boycotting Georgia. Yes, they did. The same company covering the NBA. Yes, they are. So Major League Baseball has made the decision that it is wrong for an American citizen to have an ID that they must have to pick up baseball tickets. And that is intrinsically Jim Crow evil. But it is okay to work with a communist government that is actually and directly and currently committing a genocide of a people simply because they don't like it. And that's okay. China is fine, and it's okay for the Chinese government to genocide a group of people, but it's wrong for Americans to be able to secure our votes. This is insane. This is actually exciting, and it is happening right now. And we have to understand that dichotomy. And when I look at this and I say, wait a minute, the NBA is promoting China, who is committing genocide. Major League Baseball is promoting China that is committing genocide. Joe Biden is afraid to say anything to China, who is committing genocide. And at the same time, these groups are telling us we are inferior. We can't make decisions for ourselves because we're not smart enough, which I understand and I believe most individuals would say genocide is evil. But these corporations and these political factions don't agree with that. I would have to say we are smarter than they are. Why do we have to listen to them? Why are we giving them our money? Why are we empowering them to tell us, to punish us for doing something, for doing things they won't do themselves? I mean, does that make sense? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. And I know this isn't a popular subject for a lot of people, especially on Easter. But if we don't talk about it now, when will we talk about it? If we don't address this now, will it ever be addressed? The fact that the rest of the media doesn't want to talk about this, doesn't want to tell you and put front and center that Major League Baseball, that the NFL, the NBA, women's soccer are lying to you to your face. And they're doing that for a political and monetary advantage. And you can still agree with them if you want. I'm not saying you can't agree with them. But I am saying that you should know what you're agreeing to and what that entails. Because to agree with Major League Baseball and to say that they have more power than the voters and the people of Georgia is to also say, well, you agree with them supporting a genocidal government. Because that's what Major League Baseball, that's what the NBA, that's what they're standing for. They are standing up for genocide in the world. And if you align with them and say, I support them in deciding that voters are not important, you are also standing by them as they say, and genocide is okay, which I do not agree with. I think that is absolutely wrong. And we denounce that on this program, and I denounce that as a person. Jason mentions Cuomo's policies are just as horrific as the Chinese communists. Easter is the best day for bringing this up. Look at the reason for the season. Resurrection, rebirth. That's Easter. That's the element, the essence of Easter. Forgiveness. And to restart and to move forward again. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Having a second chance is a good thing. But when we've given people a second chance, as an example, going back to when I was talking in March about U.S. women's soccer, do they deserve a second chance? Can we give them that second chance? And the answer we got back from them is no, because they're doubling down on the same lie. They are lying to us for their political and monetary gain. They have decided that we are too stupid to understand the truth, that they will lie to our faces because it's emotionally manipulative and it gives them power. Something that we were told on 60 Minutes, and one of the main reasons why I think that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is evil and duplicitous, is she went on to national TV, speaking in front of the world, and said, the facts don't matter. How feelings are what matter. That she is more than willing to not tell you the facts because the emotions are more important, which means she is willing to lie to you. And we're seeing that same thing come from people like Joe Biden, who has actively lied about what's going on with U.S. women's soccer, and he has also lied about what's happening in Georgia. Did you not notice when he spoke to the American people and he said that in Georgia, you can't vote after 5 o'clock? That is a lie. The law did not change the voting, what time you can go and vote. He lied to the American people. He is fundamentally wrong. And yet he is telling you, you're too stupid to know and look up this information. Believe me, believe this emotion, give me more power. And I think that's just a terrifying thought. People may disagree with me. You may say, well, Mike, you just don't understand. That law is fundamentally flawed. Fantastic. Tell me how it's flawed. But don't tell me the emotion about why you feel it's flawed. Don't tell me that you feel like it's detrimental, that you feel like it is racist. Show me how it is racist. Tell me how it is racist for people who already have an ID to present that ID. Tell me how it's racist to assume that people cannot read their ID and see it says driver's license number and put that on a piece of paper. Tell me how you think people aren't smart enough to do that transaction, and tell me how that is a punishment to those people. Please explain that to me, but don't tell me, well, it feels like it's wrong. I don't care how you feel. I feel like I should be a billionaire. I feel like I should be 20. These aren't facts. They're not going to happen. That's not reality. Sounds silly. It's true. I feel like I should be a great sportsman. I'm not. Does it matter that that's how I feel? No. What is important is what is the reality. Tracy Lynn. Hey, Tracy. She says, I needed to show my license and ID to get my COVID shot. Exactly. Michael Bowie mentions AOC is a paid actress, a hired activist. And I tend to believe that she is an activist first and a congresswoman who represents her people way down on the list. She's there to be a democratic socialist, to promote democratic socialism, not to represent the people of her district, the 14th District of New York. And that is a problem. And she has told the people of her district and this nation she is willing to lie to your face if it makes her feel good. Those were her words on 60 Minutes. Look it up if you don't believe it. I have covered it on the program before. I have played her voice, her question asked by 60 Minutes, and her response in full context. I'm not taking out of her words, her context, her meaning. But I am being explicit about it, something the rest of the media doesn't seem to want to do. Just as I'm being explicit about the lie that has been said by Marriott Rapinoe, that has been said by Joe Biden, that is being said right now by Major League Baseball, that is being used to manipulate the public and to manipulate us in our most vulnerable time, which is when we're trying to enjoy entertainment to escape from the problems and the issues of the day. Not that we won't ever deal with it, but that we need a moment of relatively calm, time away from the issue so that we can gather our faculties and to reapproach it both calmly, intelligently, and with a clear mind, without the cloud of emotions pushing us towards an answer that may not be the best answer. I don't know. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think I've completely missed it. I look forward to hearing what people have to say about this, both here live with us as well as online afterwards. And remember, just like you're seeing Tracy, Jason, Hot Chicks, Michael, they're all commenting. You can comment too on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on DLive. You can make your comments, and this is a conversation with you. I'm giving you what I'm understanding based on the information, the credible sources that we see this, and I'm saying, let's have an honest conversation about that. And you're capable of responding from anywhere in the world, and I will be talking about the United Kingdom in a moment, a little bit more explicitly. But you can also call into the program at 607-242-1582, and we're happy to hear what you have to say on whatever issues you think are important. And again, you don't have to agree with me. You can tell me I'm wrong. You can say, I don't agree. You can say, there's something that we're missing in this discussion. Because if we don't have a discussion, then we're just being led around and like at a pasture. We're no longer human if we're not having conversations, which is why the First Amendment is so critical, why it's so important to express ourselves and to say what we think, whether other people agree with it or not. I think that's very important. And to do so every opportunity we get, which is why I'm not taking off for Easter. That's why I'm here with you right now. But let's move forward a little bit, because sports are important, entertainment is important. The obvious and blatant manipulation that is going on in our entertainment, whether it's in comic books where we see this, whether it's in movies like Star Wars and Wonder Woman 1984, and so many other things, Captain Marvel, that have completely failed. Not only is it in our entertainment, in our social media, which is like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, as they punish us for having different ideas, there's a lot more going on. Because at the same time that that's happening, we have our government doing insanely stupid things. In particular, I'm talking about New York, but it's also on a national level. In New York State right now, New York State is essentially bankrupt. We lost $13 billion in 2020. We had lost $7 billion, I'm rounding up slightly, in 2019. Governor Cuomo's economic policies have been destroying this state, which is why 1.8 million people, and if you're not including illegal aliens, I believe even more, left this state while he has been in power. And he got lucky and had the federal government step in and bail him out to pay off the $12 billion of the debt that he brought to New York State, destroying 30% of the businesses in New York State, with another 40% of businesses that may not make it to June of this year because of his policies. And he has decided that since he got $12 billion, the best thing he could do for New York State is to give $2.1 billion, to give 2.1, excuse me, sorry, news announcements are coming up as we go in the show. But he wants to take $2.1 billion of your money. This is your money. It's coming out of your pocket. He's going to take $2.1 billion and he's going to give it to illegal aliens. People who have actively broken the law, and he wants to give them your money. Let me give you details on this so you can understand how crazy this is. The problem is that illegal aliens may have lost their jobs along with everyone else in New York State and people across the country. Literally 30% of businesses across the country have closed. Actually, the rest of the country is on average about 25%. New York State lost more than the average in the nation because we have a worse economic system. The $12 billion he got from the government is coming from everyone in the United States. Everyone in the United States just paid for New York State to lose money. And his decision is, now that everyone paid us off and we're back to even, he's going to spend your money, no matter where you are in the United States. He's going to take your money and he's going to give it to someone who broke the United States law, that are active criminals that are seeking to continue to commit a crime, that because they cannot illegally work in America, which is a crime, on top of the crime of entering America without permission, that he wants to give them $28,000 that some Americans don't earn in a year. He's going to give you $28,000 of your money because they're an illegal alien in New York State and they might not be able to work. And some Democrats, to be exact, some Democrats want to give them even more money. They want to give them $3.5 billion. Do you understand how crazy that is? And as Jesse mentions, we were $6 billion under before the pandemic. Actually, you're right, Jason, but not quite. It was $6.8 billion in the hole in 2019. That's how much we were losing and we were projected to lose $8 billion in 2020 before the pandemic hit. So we are losing money. The policies, the guidance by Governor Cuomo and the single party rule of the Democratic Party in New York State has destroyed our economy before there was a pandemic. And it has only gotten worse. And now their next idea, these brilliant economists that can't run a government, let alone run a business, have decided that, hey, the best thing we can do, rather than opening up New York, rather than letting people go back to work, rather than giving them jobs, is to take your money and to give it to someone who is actively breaking the law. Let me ask you a question. Do you think if you pay illegal aliens $28,000 American, which is worth 10 times as much in pesos and Venezuelan dollars and so forth, that there are going to be less people who try to get into America illegally or more? Do you think it's going to create more people at the border or less by giving them free money? And let's not forget, it is illegal for someone who is illegal in the nation to work. We are paying them to be in our country and break our laws. That's what Governor Cuomo is working on right now. That is what he is trying to decide. He is taking money out of your pocket right now to give it to someone who is actively breaking the law and is not allowed to do. It is illegal for them to do anything they are doing. And we are being told by this same people, and don't worry, there will be fewer of these people trying to get this free money if we do this. Because somehow they're going to decide, I can come to America and I can get free money and they're not going to kick me out. even though I'm breaking the law. By the way, if we're picking and choosing laws, what law do they pick and choose? Why should they care about murder or anything else if we're picking and choosing which laws we're going to enforce? In fact, why is anyone in New York State following the law? Because you can pick and choose whatever laws you want to do. That's what Governor Cuomo is doing. That is what the New York State legislature is doing. They're picking laws and saying, well, this one we'll enforce and that one we won't. This is a law that we think is important. That one isn't important. And you have to follow all the laws we're telling you to follow. Why? Why should I follow you and the laws that you're picking if I don't even agree with them? Because they're blatantly and officially illegal. If you're breaking the law, why do I have to follow the law? And again, how is that not a recipe for self-destruction? How does that not destroy New York State and America? I mean, does that make sense? Let me get back to the comments. Tracy Lynn mentions, if so many people are coming here from countries that are so full of corruption, human atrocities, and death, why don't we take that money and go into those countries to help? Right at the source. It seems we did nothing to help Syria, and all of those citizens had to leave and hope another country would let them in. I'm not saying to force our system on these countries, but help good people who care about their citizens become leaders. Then maybe people would stay in their home country. That's a great question, Tracy, and I'm glad you asked. Let me address that. We did that. We have been doing that. In fact, if you remember in December, when we passed the first $1.9 trillion COVID relief, we paid, as an example, the government of Jordan $300 million to run their country. Jordan, by the way, is not bankrupt. Jordan sells oil. They make a lot of money. And we paid them $300 million to run their government. We paid Syria money. We paid Egypt $1 billion a year to run their government. The problem is those countries, many of these countries are corrupt. And because we are giving them something for free, they take it for advantage. They take it for, they don't care. It's just free money to them. They got it and they're going to always get it. It's meaningless. And therefore, it doesn't impart anything on them because they didn't earn it. It's the same thing as when you tell kids that they're entitled. Well, they don't think to work for things anymore. Well, you're just going to give me that because I deserve it. You deserve to come out of college and get a $60,000 a year job because you're entitled to a $60,000 a year job. Aren't you? You don't have to earn that job. You don't have to have experience and grow. You deserve and you are entitled to a $15 or $15 minimum wage or a $23 living wage. You're entitled to that because you exist and breathe air. Don't you? And the fact that you don't have any skills and have no qualifications and do not justify that, well, that's not important. And that is fundamentally a flaw. That is self-destruction. It is a recipe for self-destruction. Again, the theme of the show today. It is a problem. By the way, Tony, I do see you. Happy Easter. Never worried about you being late to the program. Just happy you're here with us. I hope your family has had a very good Easter lunch and dinner. So I think that's the important thing. And Tracy, so I'm not saying you're wrong, Tracy, but I am saying that when we just give money and let people feel, in these countries feel like they're entitled to what we have and without any other condition, then we abuse them. They abuse us. We abuse them. It leads to a vortex that goes down, down, down and doesn't help. Tony mentions that it goes back to the 90s participation trophies. Yes, it does. And now suddenly, well, nobody needs to win because everyone wins. Then why get in the race in the first place? If, as an example, you're the government of Egypt or you're the government of Jordan, Why should you improve yourselves if you're already getting hundreds of millions, if not billions of American dollars every year? What's your reason for improving? And therefore, their people don't live a better quality of life, and therefore, they're going to still come to America because there is a better quality of life and better freedom here. I understand why they're coming. That still doesn't justify them doing so illegally, if that makes sense. Tracy mentions, oh, I mean to also send in people to help also. Okay, so I understand what you're saying, and so, but a lot of people who are watching this may have that same question and never asked it or didn't understand. We're already doing it to an extent. I just think we haven't followed up all the way and said, we're going to give you, the country of Jordan. We're going to give you $300 million of our American taxpayer dollars, money we can give to the homeless in New York State, that we could use to give kids a place to stay, like in a hotel, like we're willing to do to foreigners, and put them in hotels for $86 million. That we're going to put these kids in hotels. We can do that for our own homeless, but we're going to give you $300 million to run your government if you treat your people better. We're not even saying become a democracy. Treat them better. Raise their quality of life. Make sure the people in your country are eating. If you do that, we'll give you $300 million a year because your people will be better off for it and the world will be better off for it. If we said that to the world, if we said that to every nation we give money to, and by the way, we give over $1 trillion a year to the world as a government. And if we just said to them, hey, we're going to give you the money, but your people have to eat. And you can't genocide your people. How about we start with just those two things? You got to feed your people and you can't genocide the people, and we'll give you money. While I'm not happy about giving our money to other countries eternally, forever, that's at least a reason which makes me say, well, maybe I'll give you some of that money. Maybe I would tell my congressman to vote to give some of that money on those conditions, because now the world is getting something for it. It at least makes sense. It's an exchange that is worthwhile. It is not a recipe for self-destruction. It is a recipe for improvement of the world. Why aren't we doing that? I mean, if we're going to do it, why aren't we doing it that way? Which I think is pretty straightforward and simple, but folks, tell me, am I not? Does that sound unreasonable? Am I being unreasonable to say that's the condition we attach to the money we're giving them? Is it wrong to expect them to improve the quality of life of their people for your tax money? Going back to the comments. Christina, hello, happy Easter. I am happy to see you here. Yes, it is the age of entitlement, which is scary. Tony mentions that I don't mind them coming. That's great. Please do it legally and safely. That's the problem. And I agree with you. And as I said, I understand why they want to come. I want them to come legally. There are rules. There are reasons why we have rules. If rules don't matter, if laws don't matter, then there is no law. And of course, that also means there is no nation. There is a reason for this. Jason mentions if they threaten the U.S. with the nuclear weapon, they get more money. That's only because we allow that. We don't have to give anyone money for a nuclear weapon. We don't have to give North Korea money for them. By the way, they have nuclear weapons and they keep shooting off missiles every time they want money. Perhaps we need, and this is the approach that the Biden administration, the Obama administration looked at North Korea and said, hey, we will give you money, stop shooting off missiles. Stop trying to scare the world and threaten people with nuclear annihilation. We'll pay you, which is called extortion. And they paid it. And that didn't help make the world more peaceful. It didn't make the people of North Korea better off. Perhaps the better answer was let's have a different kind of conversation. And if you don't do the right thing, we won't help you. And you need help. That's why they're shooting off the missiles, because they need food and help for their people. So how about we say, instead of giving the money for shooting off missiles, if you treat your people better, we will give you money and food. Isn't that a better system? I mean, maybe I'm just crazy and ignorant. Maybe I haven't watched 53 years of American diplomacy around the world and not noticed that we're approaching this all from the wrong direction. And the people who are telling us that are telling us we are too ignorant to understand the high level politics that go on. And the people who are deciding this are just regular people. Politicians are not smarter than you and me. For as someone who has spoken with many members of Congress, Republican and Democrat, who has talked to and interviewed many members of state legislatures, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, who's talked to many candidates of almost every level of government in our nation, I can tell you for a fact, not one of them is necessarily smarter or better than you or me. They are just human beings. Some of them are idiots. Some of them are smart. Some of them have parts of things that they're really good at, and they have no idea how to do other things. Just like everyone else. And we have this misunderstanding that, hey, these guys are brilliant. And they must know international politics because it's so different. No, they don't. They know as much as you and I do. And they understand international politics as well as you and I do, as long as we pay attention to what's going on. That's the reality. Hey, our first viewer from D Live, hello. I'm not sure what the name is or what language that is, but hello. I love to have international viewers. It's always fantastic. But let me bring this back. And Tony mentions the wall only said use the door, which I agree with. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Because when we don't do that, what we do instead is when we say there is no wall, there is only a door, we get 16,000 children sent 1,000 miles by themselves, along with sexual predators and gang members and drug runners, and God knows how many of them don't make it here, that are sent into our nation in a never-ending stream, which is why it is expected that roughly 1 million people will try and enter our nation this year illegally, which is an increase, a massive increase on what we've seen over the last 4 years. That is a problem. It is a problem that will never go away because we are encouraging it, and that destroys our nation. It destroys the fabric and quality of our nation. No less than when we see U.S. women's soccer, Rapinoe, the captain, who is lying to the American people. When we listen to Joe Biden lie to the American people about equality in sports, when we listen to him lie about the effects of a election law in Georgia, this is a problem. And you don't have to agree with me, but if you don't, tell me why. And don't tell me your feelings, because I don't care. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me what factually is incorrect in what I am saying. Because I don't care about your feelings, because you don't care about my feelings. It's okay. You don't have to. Some people just, they don't know me. I don't expect you to care about my feelings if you don't know who I am. But I do expect that we can still have a discussion on the facts. And if I misunderstand the facts, please correct me. I'm a human being. I can get it wrong. We all can. But if we don't talk about it, how will we know? Which is one of the reasons why we challenge people on the show and say, hey, let's think about the issues that are going on. Let's think about this. And by the way, I'm not the only one saying some of these things. Recently, there was, as you may have seen, this meme from Ted Cruz about why do illegal aliens arrive at the border clean and refreshed after traveling 1,500 miles on foot. Why don't they ever carry food or blankets? Which is a big question. I've always asked that. And how do they charge their cell phones? Another good question. And why do they have t-shirts that say Joe Biden? Why do they have the Joe Biden t-shirts? Did you ever ask that? And we've seen pictures of it. They have Joe Biden t-shirts. Why do you have a Joe Biden 2020 t-shirt from Honduras? Who sent you the t-shirt? Why would you care in Honduras about the American presidency and Joe Biden in particular? Where did that come from? Someone had to give you that. Somehow you had to be brought here. How did that happen? It's a question. And I think it's a good question to ask because it helps answer the question of what's going on in our nation. Why are we destroying ourselves? I'll give you another example. We currently have a cop killer, an NYPD cop killer who shot an officer execution style, who is now part of New York State police reform. Do you think maybe he has a bias? Do you think maybe he's not the best person for the job? Just maybe. Richard Rivera is a convicted criminal who committed cold-blooded murder. Why do we care about his opinion? Why do we need him to be part of the process when his answer, I don't care what his problem is with the New York Police Department, it doesn't matter. His answer was, let me go and kill someone because he felt like that was something he should do. That was his feelings instead of the facts. That should terrify you. That should make you say, why are we listening to this person? Why are we elevating this person and saying, yeah, if you go out and cold-bloodedly murder someone, you'll get rewarded with a position of power? Why would we ever want to send that message to anyone in the world ever? I mean, am I wrong? Does that make sense to everyone? We are rewarding the cold-blooded murder of human beings and elevating the murderer to a position of power. Does that make sense? Would you do that for anyone else? Let me reword the question to make it more visceral for people. If there is a rapist, would you make that rapist in charge of rape laws, of enforcing rape laws? And I don't think there's a single woman in the world that would say, yes, let's do that, because that makes sense. I don't care what your reasoning is behind it. You would never do that because it is counterproductive. It is self-destructive. It drives people away from any kind of support. No matter how good your goal is in terms of reform, you are going to alienate people, divide people massively on this, and you're sending the wrong message. You're saying that this is okay. Whether you want to or not, you are saying this is okay. We will allow this if you happen to be the right type of person. If you have the right political background, we will support that. And I think that is horrendous. How can we not denounce this? And yes, I know the feeds are kind of crazy right now. Back and forth. You know what's the easiest way, by the way, when people hear me say, oh, well, this is the internet overlords messing with the system. The easiest way to know is if you watch this, if you watch the show, not live, but you watch the video of it, and if you notice that there is no interruption in me speaking, that tells you, and that is the proof that the internet overlords are messing with the feed as you're watching it. If you can't see it while we're doing it live, but you can see the video afterwards on the same format. So if you're watching us on Facebook or on Twitter or on DLive, and if you can't see something, if it's not a smooth video live feed, live stream, but you see the video on those same platforms and there is no interruption, if you can't comment or see anything while you're watching it, but you can do it after the show, then that's that system. That is those internet overlords trying to silence me by making it difficult for you to have your voice heard and to interact, because they don't want you to have these conversations. Whether you agree with me or not, and by the way, no one is restricted from this program. We have never stopped anyone. We have had trolls on this program. We've had people who hate my guts. We've had people who have disagreed completely with us, and we have never turned a single one of them away. But the internet overlords have turned many of you away, and there is a reason for that. So, Tony mentions that Rivera is a windbag convict that wants anarchy. He is a very bad person, and I don't believe we should ever elevate him and give him a position of power. Tracy mentions, if he was unjustly arrested or found to be innocent after his 40 years in prison, that's one thing. But he's guilty, he admitted it. And again, I agree. I'm not talking about someone who unjustly was convicted of a crime, someone who was incorrectly found in the justice system, that they were caught in the cracks or they were improperly found to be guilty. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about someone who absolutely intended to do what they did. In this case, cold-blooded murder. And we are elevating them to a position of power. And by the way, that's being paid for by your tax dollars. They are being empowered over you, being given more power than you have. They are more important than your vote. They are changing the policy that will affect your life, and you are paying for it with your tax dollars. We are promoting the most evil of the evil with your money, and it is taking a priority over your life. And New York State seems to think this is a great idea. That's just, I just don't even know what the words are for this. I really don't. Shauna says that this is a plandemic. This is a wag the dog situation. For those who don't know, that's a movie, Wag the Dog. Really good movie, by the way. The economy collapsed. This was their cover story. The state has yet to make good on several grants to 501c3s, which are charities, for people who are not familiar with that, from 2018, claiming in 2020 that they cannot honor it because of COVID. What? Tony, my feed got frozen. It's not frozen on my side. And by the way, I upgraded my system 3 weeks ago so that my signal is coming out at about 8 times what is required to have a consistent feed. So it's not me. Just so you know. Shauna, you make a very good point that this is all part of the wag the dog. You have to pay attention to other things. The economy in New York and the nation is broken. We have spent trillions of dollars. We have spent more money. We are at over 100% in spending. The United States government tends to spend in a year $4 trillion. We have spent over $8 trillion to date. That's like you going out and you get paid, I don't know, $30,000 a year. So you decide to spend $60,000 in that year, and you don't pay any of your essential bills. And then you wonder, why are they trying to evict me? Why can't I feed myself? Why is everyone upset with me and asking me for money? It's because you spent way too much money and you did something really stupid. I mean, let's be honest, that's what it is. And that's what we're doing right now. When we're trying to give $2 billion to people, and some say $3 billion to people for breaking our laws, when we are paying people who have committed murder, when we are encouraging people to come to our borders and to violate our laws, and when we are going out and lying to the American people, saying that We have to elevate a group of people because they can't do it on their own. And that elevation is based on an absolute lie. There's a problem. Which is why I say this is how you get self-destruction. This is how you destroy a nation. This is how you divide people. And when you make it omnipresent, that it's not only in our politics, but it's in our entertainment as well. It's in our sports, our movies, our comic books, our books. Then it's inescapable and it is a problem. Because everyone needs an escape every so often. I play video games. I go out to the bar and hang out with my friends and have a beer. When I get done with the show, every week I go out to my local bar, a good friend of mine, the Belmar, and I have a beer and relax because you got to escape sometimes. And I don't usually talk about politics. Not because I don't love it, not because I'm not good at it, but we need a break. We need community and we need unity. And guess what? It's not like when I go out into the real world and talk with people in person, people don't always agree with me. Some people think I'm completely wrong. Some people can't stand politics and don't talk to me about it. And that's okay. Because I treat them like human beings and they're not a category on a list going, oh, well, that one doesn't believe in the politics I believe in. They're just a bad person. That one has the wrong skin color. They're an evil person inherently. Oh, that one has the wrong gender. Can't talk to them. It's not like I go out and say, hey, you know what? I went to the bar. You have to pay for my drinks because you were born the wrong color, the wrong gender, and believe in the wrong religion. And yet, that is what we are listening to our leaders tell us today in entertainment, in sports, in politics, in our businesses, Coca-Cola, Delta, with their diversity training, saying some of the people in this nation that work for that company, that buy that product, are inherently evil and they must be punished. That is an inherent problem. And if you think I'm wrong, which is fine, tell me why. Don't tell me why you feel like I'm wrong. Please tell me why I'm wrong. Why is that not factually, why am I factually incorrect? Not that you feel like it's not the right thing, because I don't care. What I want to hear is, why is it actually wrong? Because I can tell you why I'm factually right. I'm giving you the examples of the facts, and I'm going in depth with them. My feelings about it don't matter. I'm not telling you what I feel about it. I'm telling you, what do these laws mean? What do these actions, what are the consequences of these actions? There is a difference. Which is why my name is not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Shauna mentions that, where did the authority for this tyranny come from? And that's a great question, Shauna, and I would tell you that the authority comes from people not speaking up, allowing the internet overlords, allowing elected officials to say, we get to decide what you get to believe. And when we do not speak up, when we do not have the conversations, when we do not say, I don't agree with you for whatever reason, and here, or whatever side, whether it's left, right, indifferent, I don't care, for whatever position you may be on that, when we don't speak up and say, I don't agree, then that empowers these people to continue to do what they're doing. Because people are not saying Coca-Cola and Delta and Major League Baseball, you're evil and you're wrong, to say that that we, the American people, are without power and that we are simply stooges and checklists. When you say that we are implicitly evil because we were born with a certain skin tone, when we don't speak up against that, that empowers them to say, oh, so you're willing to let me do that? Let me see what else I can get away with. If you're willing to allow me to classify a group of people as inherently evil because they were born with or without melanin, then what else can I get away with? What else are you willing to pay me to do to you? And that's what scares me in this government right now. This is what scares me in the world right now. Not that, I don't care if you're, well, I do care if you're, a progressive or not. But what I care about more so is we have to be able to speak and say some of these things are wrong, just fundamentally, absolutely wrong. Did someone send me a text? Not sure. Again, you can call into the show at 607-242-1582. Also, please, you can leave comments like you're seeing from Shauna and Mike Bowie and Jason and Tracy and Hot Chicks. I love it. You guys are all important, and I love having these conversations. Tracy, Shauna goes on to say, currency race to the bottom of the debtor nations. The U.S. government robbed the wealthy nations. That's one way of looking at it. Shauna says the government officers break the law. People are breaking the law, and I'm saying call them out. Let's call them out and hold them accountable to the law, left, right, or indifferent. I'm saying what Charles Barkley said. Don't separate people because you're on the right, you're on the left, as much as I am saying, you know what? Our politicians are not working for us, and that's not acceptable. It's one thing to say, I have a Republican conservative viewpoint. I also want to hold my elected officials, Democrat or progressive as they may be, because I live in New York State, I want to hold them accountable to making the right decisions for the most people and trying to put in the best policies. If year after year, Governor Cuomo makes New York State more and more in debt, if more and more businesses are closing year after year, if more and more people are leaving the state, fleeing as fast as they can with as much money as they can, and if he is empowering cop killers to become in charge of police reform, these are not positives helping the nation. It's not because he's a Democrat, it's because he's an idiot. He is a horrible leader. And the fact that he killed 16,000 people, I will not stop saying this, he killed 16,000 people and lied to our faces. It is a corruption and cover-up, and then is alleged to have had 9 sexual misconduct actions. You know what? My answer is, he's the problem. Hold him accountable. Why is he still in power? I don't get it. Tell me what he did so right that the New York legislature is still standing behind him. That Joe Biden is standing behind him and saying, hey, keep him in power. Why are you saying that? Please explain to me, what did he do that's worth this? Because all I see him doing is destroying New York State, which means he's destroying the United States, which means he's making the rest of the world less stable and more prone to violence. Does that make sense, folks? Can you follow me on that lead that we're going on? And to go back to some of the other comments, Michael Bowie mentions that some of the progressive ideology is moving us towards a guaranteed basic income, which is a really stupid idea that will bankrupt our country. And again, it goes to, I'm giving you money for free. People will not value that, and therefore they will take advantage of it and do nothing with it. They will not empower themselves or anyone else with that, which is why it is an absolute bad idea. You haven't earned it, you don't deserve it. There's no reason why we should give it to you. And why you should take money out of my pocket to give to someone else, I don't know, because you shouldn't. Shauna mentions that she's an artist. I didn't know that. What kind of art? Are we talking music, drawing and such, sculptures? I am interested in that. She says, with that said, I will surely check my privilege. If I see you out, I am buying you a drink as an act of good faith that I thoroughly checked it. That is funny. And Shauna, don't do that. If you're out and you see me in a bar, like at the Belmar after this show, and you come on out, don't buy me a drink because I'm presuming that means you're white. Do not buy me a drink because you're white. I would never want anyone to do that. I would never want someone to do something for me because of the color of skin that I have or that they have. Please don't do that. If we have a good conversation, if you're enjoying the conversation, if you think that I'm just a good looking 53-year-old man, fantastic, buy me whatever you want. But if you're doing it because I have a different skin color or that I grew up in a different part of the nation, that's not something I inherently did. That's not something that's about me. And that is a detraction against you. I would never want someone to do that because it's the same reason why I don't believe in the ERA movement, equal rights movement, why I don't believe in affirmative action. I don't believe in rewarding people for something they have not earned. If you have not put in the effort, you don't deserve the reward ever. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what religion you have. I don't care what sex you have or what sex you prefer. If you have not earned it, and if you have not even attempted to earn it, you do not deserve the reward, period. And no one should ever go against that because it doesn't help anyone. It is in fact, I believe, this whole thing about privilege, white privilege, black privilege, it is insulting and it is derogatory to the people that it is pointed at. If you are saying that if you're saying that white people have white privilege and are inherently evil because of that, what you are actually saying is that people of color, whether it's black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, what you are actually saying is they are lesser, that they are inferior, and that they are not capable to the same level that whites are, and therefore they must be helped because they are helpless. When you say that women must be helped up to be equal, you're inherently saying they are incapable of doing this for themselves without some external third party stepping in and saying, I'm going to do it for you because you pitiful thing, you cannot do it for yourself. And I inherently and absolutely reject that. I am an intelligent man who has gone around the world, speaks several languages, has owned several businesses, owns a house, and has run for elected office, even if I lost. And guess what? I did all of this because I am a good person who is educated, who has taken the time to educate myself, to learn about different things. And no, I am not a genius. And no, I am not brilliant at everything. But I try. And I hold everyone else to that same standard. Call that unfair if you wish. But I treat them equally. And I don't care about your color, your gender, your sexual preferences or religions, or where you came from, or where your great-great-great-grandfather or grandparents came from. I don't care. And if you're a good person, I will hold you up. If you're a bad person, I'll try and help you rehabilitate. If you're an evil person, I will try and strike you down, just like anyone else should. Not everyone has to agree with that, but I want you to understand it. You don't have to tell me you think I'm right. You don't have to say, Mike, I agree with that. You can absolutely say, Mike, that's fundamentally wrong. Fantastic. Tell me why. Again, this is about conversation. And maybe a little bit of me ranting, so I apologize for that. But let me go back to some of the comments here. So, Shauna, I hope you understand it in the way that I meant it, because I kind of took your comment and went to a much larger context, not directly towards you. I want to make sure that's clear. I'm talking about a much larger context of the nation and the issues that are going on right now. So I don't want anyone to think that I was trying to target you. That's not the case. I was going off of that to talk about a much larger issue. She says, the war on drugs, I need you to clarify that. I'm not sure what you mean by that. she says that Shauna has said that we are in the trenches fighting against the war on intelligence. There's a war that is absolutely going on where we're seeing a war on intelligence, a war on thought, and understanding consequences that are going on. And it is destroying America. I agree with you on that. Absolutely. And yes, Shauna, happy Easter to you as well. Thank you. What do you mean? Shauna had mentioned in a comment that there is a state senator by the name of State Senator Fred Akshar, and she says dual holding. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Are you talking about the fact that he holds two positions? He is actively working as a law enforcement at the same time that he's currently a state senator, and that you have an issue with that? If so, please let me know for sure. There's a 150-year dance of the totalitarian tiptoe. I know sometimes I go on to tangents or a little bit of a rant, and I apologize, folks, because then I look back on your comments and then I'm like, I'm running through so many different things sometimes that I don't catch the context of where you left your comment as I was saying something. So I apologize. Sometimes I miss that context. And Tony mentions that, Mike, if I bought you a drink, it's because I count you as a friend, and it's the Irish thing to do to honor your friends. I love that, Tony, and yes, we must have a drink. If for no other reason than that, I agree with it. I love it. And Shauna does go on to say, LOL, I agree with all those points about race. I'm glad that we do understand. And I just want to make sure I was clear, because I know sometimes it's sometimes when you're saying something, you understand it a certain way, it doesn't necessarily come out that way. So I do want to make sure about that. Tracy says, I sent you a message about the U.S. sending money to the Sudan and part of the result. Well, I can only imagine how horrible that is, because the United States government is the worst at doing almost everything. But the only thing any government does well is take money, collect money, build power, and have militaries. And everything else, I believe, individuals can do better, whether in a corporation or as an individual. Everything else, we always make better decisions than any government, because governments have an inherent goal of preserving and building their own power. They are selfish that way. I don't care if you're talking about the Chinese government, the American government, the British government, or any other government in between. They're all the same. You want to talk about socialism in the Sweden and those nations, the Nordic nations, they're the same. Every government has an inherent interest in promoting itself, building itself up, gaining more power through whatever means it can. That's true. It's selfish. It's human nature. I understand it. And I think because of that, we have to understand people are always better. People created the light bulb. People sent someone to the moon. Governments collect money. Governments try to redistribute your earnings, and they usually do it the wrong way. And there's unforeseen consequences of every government and the actions that they do. The government, we had Joe Biden come out and say, Joe Biden came out and said that he disagreed with the law in Georgia. The unexpected consequence is that Major League Baseball and Coca-Cola decided to say that they were more important than the American people, the citizens of Georgia, who put these politicians in place, who have voted for these laws, and the fact that, according to polling, 72% of Americans agree that to make sure our election system is more secure and that everyone can have faith and confidence in our election system and its integrity, that we should have ability to have an ID checked so that we know every vote is being counted and is by an American citizen for whatever that American citizen believes in. That's what 72% of America believes. and Coca-Cola and Major League Baseball and Joe Biden are currently telling us, well, that's evil. How in the world is that evil? Seriously, how's that evil? Tell me how it's not more evil that an unknown person or organization is going to fill out an unknown number of ballots, send them in without any proof or validation to achieve a political agenda that they want. Tell me how that isn't evil, how that doesn't serve the people. That some group, because there is no way to identify and verify that an American citizen made a vote, that you're willing to risk that some unknown group, Russians, Chinese, whomever it may be, are going to send in a bunch of ballots to get an outcome that they want that the American people didn't want. How can you call that secure? How can you call that uplifting? How is that good for America? How is that not a recipe for self-destruction? Does that make sense, folk? Am I making sense with this? Because if I'm not, please tell me. I want to understand. And if it does make sense, why are we letting this happen? Because we control this. We are the power of the government. Let's see here. And by the way, Tracy, I am going to read your message after we get done with the show to look that over. But I do know about some of the things, some of the nations we've sent money to. I use Jordan as an example because they are an oil-rich nation that is relatively stable in the Middle East. And we're sending them $300 million to run their own government, which makes no sense to me, which is absolutely stupid. And we have no expectation from them for giving them that money, which makes no sense to me. Tony says, I think that Fred Axe are holding two jobs, one of them making laws and one that upholds laws is or can be potentially be a conflict of interest. It is a question that is ongoing right now. A lot of people are not sure if it is or isn't a conflict of interest because he is in the legislative branch and the executive branch at the same time, basically being a law enforcer, an officer of law enforcement and legislature. It is, and it can have a conflict, and it's an interesting conversation, and Senator Akshar will no longer speak with me about that or other things, so I can't ask him. Otherwise, I would have him on the show and ask that question. But he has refused to appear here. And Shauna says that these are things that are a war on personal liberty, and I agree with you. It seems that I'm constantly calling this office on things I believe are a conflict of interest. I can understand that when you're talking about State Senator Fred Akshar, who I do know, and as I said, no longer speaks with me or is willing to speak on the show. Although other politicians have spoken with me and do show up on the show, and in particular, a bunch of Democrats, surprisingly. Tracy mentions that a U.S. diplomat was assassinated in the Sudan in 2008. The family sued Sudan, but was stalled until the U.S. gave the Sudan millions of dollars. Then the Sudan finally paid the lawsuit, basically giving the U.S. back its own money, which doesn't surprise me. Again, that's when you're giving money for no reason, you see stupid things like that happen. Shauna mentioned she'd buy me the drink because she's white and I'm black. And it still triggered the plot. Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow. Yeah, I can't stand Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow. That's a political organization, not necessarily the individuals, the organization and what it stands for, because it is a racist organization. It has racist goals and ideology. And it seeks to separate people and to diminish people for the political gain of that organization and its members. And I have never found them to be worthwhile because of that reason. Any organization that says someone is inherently evil because of the color of their skin and that that person needs to be retrained in their life because they were born with a certain skin tone, that organization is evil in my estimation. From my value system, that's an evil thing to do. No one has to agree. That's what I believe. Let me again remind people that as you're watching the show, and even after the show, please do leave messages in the comments on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on DLive to let me know what you think about what's going on. Because we do pay attention to your comments live and after the show as well. Please do share this with other people, and most of all, subscribe so that more people can be involved in this expression of free speech. It's very important, and we invite you to do that every week because we believe in you. We believe in free speech. And by the way, that's also why I'm going to be on April 13th. I will be speaking to the students of Rutgers University, which is my former college I went to, the State University of New Jersey, Rutgers University, and I will be speaking. I am the feature speaker with them on April 13th at 9 p.m., talking about the Second Amendment and in particular red flag laws and how that is affecting people both there and in the United States. So you are invited to see that. It will be live streamed, and we look forward to hearing your comments about that. Here's something that not many people are talking about, and I did want to address. Did you know that right now, free speech, which is what we're engaging in, is under attack? And it's under attack most specifically for students, both in high school and in college. The government, the school systems at high school level and in your colleges are actively looking to silence you. And this is terrifying. This is terrifying because, as reported by Slate on March 29th, we will see coming up very shortly a Supreme Court decision on BL versus Mananoy Area School District. The argument here is a young woman, Brandy Levy, who was a minor in high school. She got pissed off at she's a cheerleader, and she got pissed off at her cheerleading coach. She had a Snapchat complaining with some vulgarity about her coach. Her coach then decided to punish her by banning her from cheerleading for a year. You don't have to care about cheerleading. It doesn't matter. No one cares about cheerleading. I don't care about cheerleading. It doesn't matter. This isn't about cheerleading. This is about free speech. That as a student, as a person, whether in college or in high school, do you have the right to disagree or complain or make any comment about your school in the education system? And while we would think that answer should be absolutely yes, and more importantly, this is happening in your time. We're not talking about when you're in a classroom trying to learn about 2 + 2 = 4. And let me say again, 2 + 2 = 4, it doesn't equal racism. That's just stupid. But if you're learning 2 + 2 = 4, that's a lesson. But if you are at lunch, or you are on a bus going home, or you're talking among your friends in your free time, and you say, you're talking about Binghamton University and the president, Harvey Steiner of Binghamton University, and you say, he absolutely made the wrong decision by supporting Progressive Leaders Tomorrow in hijacking a public speaking event by Dr. Art Laffer. If you want to say that in your private time, the school should not be able to infringe on your First Amendment free speech right and attack you and punish you for having said that. It is your right. You absolutely must be able to say that. And the Supreme Court is going to hear about that very shortly, because it is possible they may say you don't, And therefore, every college, every school, and eventually everywhere, because if it starts in the schools and you are taught in schools that you do not have the right to free speech, that you cannot speak without being punished, then eventually it will become a fact of your life and used against you in politics and in your job and in every part of your life to say, and we will punish you forever for being able to have free speech, that you no longer have free speech. Because we become Canada with C-16 and you can't say certain words, and if you do, the government will punish you for it. That is the danger. So I really, really, really want people to be aware that this case is coming up by the Supreme Court and people should be aware of it. Tony mentioned that me speaking at Rutgers University on April 13th will be an exciting show, talking about the awareness of the Second Amendment and the consequences of red flag laws in New Jersey, as well as the rest of the nation. And I think it will be. I think people will be very, very surprised about what the true consequences are based on, I've had 3 years of following the red flag laws, amongst other Second Amendment issues. And I think a lot of people will be very, very surprised, especially the students at Rutgers University. Shauna mentioned that the New York State Constitution, Article 3, Section 7 on dual holding. I will definitely look into that because I'm not familiar with that law or that citation. The public schools are rolling out the curriculum. But I'd call, well, Shauna, you can always give a call whenever you can. We don't force anyone to speak on this show, but we celebrate when everyone does. Tony mentions that, yes, on your own time, not on school time, it's your responsibility to call out issues. Absolutely. And if it's on your time, not the school time, not the time for your lessons, no one should dare try and silence someone for their opinion. There is a problem there. And they are targeting the most vulnerable, those who are young people. They're not adults. They're picking on children, training them to not think for themselves, to not speak for themselves. And that never works for a nation that intends to have free populations. That's how you train people to be mindless zombies. That is the Soviet Union. That is communist China. That you cannot think, you cannot speak, and if you do, you will be punished. That is Venezuela right now, as it kills over 5,200 of its own people. That is the problem. This is why it's important, because it's not about cheerleaders. It's about the future of free speech. And if they silence free speech at high schools and they silence free speech at colleges, they will silence you. And Michael Bowie makes a great point that cheerleaders or athletes need to respect their coaches. I agree. But my question isn't about should that coach be respected and the inherent problem of a child not respecting their teachers and mentors, because that is a problem. But the thing I'm very much focused on is free speech is being destroyed. It's one thing to say, I have free speech and I'm going to abuse that right to take down and tear apart other people unfairly. You can teach someone how to respect others, to be able to respect or even respectfully disagree with someone. You can teach that. If I teach you, you can't speak, and that if you do speak and I don't agree with it, you will be punished, that is stifling free speech. That is killing the independent spirit. That is destroying an individual, and that is a problem, especially in a nation that celebrates free speech. Does that make sense? And again, maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but that's a different question. Sorry about that. And that kind of brings me to another thing, which is for our friends across the pond, I know Agent Black is out there somewhere watching the show. And he's a friend of ours from across the pond over in the United Kingdom, amongst several other people from the United Kingdom that are regularly watching this program. Did you know that 3 days ago, according to the BBC News, that the United Kingdom has just decided that there is no institutional racism in the United Kingdom government? Why can't the United States say this? I don't know. At the same time that we are watching the Biden administration try to reprogram American citizens and their own workers on what it is to be white or black or all these different groups, while they are literally creating re-education camps, we are listening to the United Kingdom and say, no, that's not true. That we aren't picking on people just because of the color of their skin. We are not punishing people for being black, white, Asian, whatever you want to be. And that you do have a fair, equal opportunity in the United Kingdom. And I have to tell you, if the United Kingdom is able to say this, I guarantee you that in the United States, that's true too. That if it is true in the United Kingdom that people, not to say that racism doesn't exist, racism will always exist because people are different. And someone, somewhere, will always hate that difference. But I think it's important we have those differences. But there is always going to be some form of racism, but that doesn't mean that there is a systemic, intrinsic, absolute racism in everything in life, especially in our government. That is not true. That is not a reality. Because I can tell you, if it was a reality, you would never have Obama as president. I don't need more proof than that. You wouldn't have Kamala Harris as vice president. She would never have run for president. She would never have been elected to the Senate. These things could not happen in a systemically racist government or society. You could not have Kemi, it is the MP, Kemi Badenoch, who is one of the leading figures of the United Kingdom right now. And she is a Black Caribbean, as I recall. No, excuse me, Black African from in the United Kingdom. She is an immigrant, first generation in the United Kingdom, as I understand. And she's in a position of power. Could not happen in a system that is systemically racist. Cannot. These are proofs. But it goes even further because they actually studied everything. And one of the things that they came to understand is the more that you blame things on this historic racism, the more you're going to have groups of people have a deep mistrust that becomes a barrier for their own success. Could you imagine any United States politician saying that? Could you imagine them coming out and saying, you know what? I know that you're in Minneapolis right now and you have an autonomous zone, which is treasonous. By definition, it is a state of treason. And you are actually creating more damage for the people of color, people who are poor. You're actually creating a worse situation, and you are creating a more systemic problem by having that autonomous zone for whatever reason that you want to claim it. You are actually creating more of a problem, and you are hurting more people long term and short term than by not having that at all. Not to say that you can't protest, not to say that you can't elect different leaders, not to say that you can't make reforms where they are necessary or important. Those aren't the same thing. I don't need an autonomous zone to elect a better politician. I don't need an autonomous zone and burning down a city and destroying people's buildings and lives and holding other citizens hostages. You don't need to do that to improve your police department or to create better laws. Where is the politician in America who's willing to have the balls to say what the United Kingdom just said? And if you think I'm wrong, tell me why. Because please, I really want to hear from someone like the progressive leaders of tomorrow, BLM, the Indivisible New York, and Citizen Action, and the other progressive leaders, the Democratic Socialists of America, especially the Ithaca chapter. I want to hear these guys tell me how it is not long-term damaging and short-term damaging to have a treasonous organization take over territory in America on the basis of someone's skin color and demonizing another group of people because of their skin color. Tell me how that is unifying, how that is helping to make things better and not worse. I want to hear that discussion, because they never have that discussion, because there is no justification for what they're doing. None whatsoever. And I've never heard an argument that is justifying it. And it's incredibly funny that the people who tell me the most that I am racist for pointing this out happen to be the very same light-skinned, white, liberal progressives that are telling me that they themselves are inherently evil and that they have to make up for the injustices that they have put on to people of color, which is really funny. I am a racist. I have listened to progressives actually tell me in person to my face after meeting me for 30 seconds and have said to me, you must be racist because you don't believe that someone is inherently evil for the color of the skin they were born with, and that it is inherently evil to not hold other people responsible for the decisions I have made in my own life. And they will not have a conversation about how that makes sense, because it doesn't. And the United Kingdom is being bold enough to say, you know what? It's stupid. And this isn't fair. It isn't real. It's hurting people. And it's not true. According to Tony Sewell, an education consultant, ex-charity boss, he states on the report, we no longer see a Britain where the system is deliberately rigged against ethnic minorities. And in case you were wondering, who is Tony Sewell? That's him. I'd love to see these white progressives, especially from America with BLM, tell that black man that he's wrong for understanding, having done research, a full report, that he's wrong to say, you know what? Britain isn't racist inherently. Just because people were born white doesn't mean that they're inherently racist. And even if American progressives believe that, the United Kingdom does not. I want to see those people tell him he's wrong. I dare you to go to his face and say, you're wrong. You, Mr. White Progressive, are going to tell the black person that they are wrong and that they are being oppressed and that they're not smart enough to understand that. Please, do you not see the lunacy, the inverted logic, I don't even know what the word is for it at the moment, that tells you how absolutely balls to the walls, bizarre, and stupid that is. That you're going to say, white people are, that a white progressive, it's almost always a white progressive who is going to say, you don't understand that white people, that they are born intrinsically evil and have a problem, and that they are controlling and power mongers. And if I don't agree with that, then I am wrong because I don't know enough to understand how much of a power monger they are and how oppressed I am. Think about that. Does that make sense to anyone? Follow that line and go and tell me that this, and then tell me that BLM makes sense. Not the concept, the organization. and what that organization is doing. Please follow that logic and tell me how that makes sense. Because it really, really doesn't. And yet, I go through it on a regular basis. So do many people. And the government of the United Kingdom has said, enough's enough, we're done with this. That this is not going to happen anymore. We're not going to allow this to happen. This is crazy. And I applaud the United Kingdom. I applaud Tony Sowell. And I applaud Kemi, their MP, which is Kemi Badenoch, for their standing up and saying, you know what, it's enough. Stop with this pleading of inferiority and just live and treat people fair, be fair, and you know what, we'll do better. And I think that's important to say, and I think that's important to believe, and that's important to do. Critical. You might think I'm wrong. I think it's absolutely important. You can tell me I'm wrong. You can tell me why you think I'm wrong if you think I am. I want to hear that. I want to hear that discussion. And I never seem to get it because the progressives just walk away. They won't answer that question. They won't face that reality. When you put the mirror in front of their face and say, are you hearing yourself? They will always go, I'm just not going to talk anymore. And they walk away. It's my understanding. You don't have to agree. It's my understanding. There is, speaking of insane Democratic Socialists of America, insane politicians that absolutely thrive on the idea that you are inherently inferior and cannot succeed without some politician propping you up and taking care of you because you're like an infant and don't know anything and have no power of your own. Let's talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who recently, and I think this is kind of funny, the woman who has no idea about economics, who really doesn't know what she's talking about, and her only purpose is to prop up socialism in America, to destroy America, because ultimately that is the goal, just pissed off the entire Democratic Party because she gave money to a bunch of Democrats because they were good socialists. And some of them said, oh no, God help me, don't give me money, don't let people know I am a socialist. People like Representative Connor Lamb of Pennsylvania, Carolyn Bordeaux of Georgia, Elisa Slotkin of Michigan, do not want the public to know that they happen to be socialists and don't want to take the money from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because people will then realize, wait a minute, she only gives money to Democratic socialists and she gave me money. Now they realize I am a socialist who is trying to destroy America. I think it's pretty funny that they got caught, which is why the major media is not talking about this and will not tell you that a bunch of socialists were just outed in the Democratic Party, and there are more of them than you think. And they are trying to hide that truth from you as fast as they can because they don't want you to know that the Democratic Party leadership has become the socialists of America and that they are leading America down a path towards communism and China. They don't want you to realize that, so they're fighting against it, and the news media doesn't want to tell you about it. Even though, they put out the story just so they could say, hey, we published the news. The fact that there's only one organization, Politico, that is putting out the news, and no one else will talk about it. No one else will have anyone to discuss it. No one else is going to go out and defend it. They're not going to. Everyone else is just like, oh, well, there was a story on it. Oh, you didn't read that story? You didn't realize that that's what happened? Oh, well, too bad. You should have known better. It's not our job to tell you what you should know. You know, what are we, the news media? We're supposed to inform the public about important events. Why should we tell you about that? Why should we have political commentary on that and say, isn't that ironic? No, we're not going to do that. I mean, people could go to Representative Connor Lamb of Pennsylvania, Carolyn Bordeaux of Georgia, Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, and ask her. You could possibly go and ask people like Representative Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th District, who is currently trying to raise money because he is terrified that he's going to lose his 2022 race in New York State because he is a social, well, I want to be fair, he is progressive-leaning Democrat and may or may not have received money from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as well, outing him for his extreme leftist ideology. You could ask them, and I bet you they won't answer you. Even though it is their job, it is the job of Representative Antonio Delgado to tell and answer to the public. That is his job. That is the job of every politician elected. That's your job, to answer to the people. And I guarantee you, he will not respond to this video. He will not respond to comments and asking him about this. Just won't. Because they run. It's kind of like when you turn on the lights and the scurrying creatures run away. It's kind of like that. Not that I am saying that he is that, but that action is kind of like that. And that's what we see amongst the socialists in our elected offices in government. They refuse to answer the questions when you corner them and say, hang on, why is the United States not absolutely denouncing the genocide of the Uyghurs in China? Why is the United States more than willing and continuing to go to China for the Olympics as a genocide is happening in China right this second, but at the same time, Biden is demanding that the boycott of Georgia, the state of Georgia, is absolutely essential because he doesn't like the law that would improve the election process. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, Tony, I know. I saw your comment, Tony. And yeah, it is ironic and it is interesting. But I'm not going to say that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just not going to use those words. Because I am sure some Democrat, upon hearing me say that, will do a clip of the video, use that, and say that I'm a racist. So I'm not going to say it. But I'd be happy to talk to Representative Delgado anytime he wants to come onto this program and to share his political views and to explain his far left ideology with the American people and try and explain to me why it is essential that we have to reprogram the American people to understand that that a good part of the American people are evil by birth, and that we should punish them for being born, which is the essentials of the progressive ideology. It is the essential of their economic policies, like Joe Biden's taxation policies, and it is essential to their social policies. Tony, I know you're an unapologetic American, so am I, but I'm also somewhat of a political figure, and I try and do this. And literally, if they could get that quote, they try and shut down this channel with social media. And knowing Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerman, they would use that against me. And yeah, they try and shut our channel down instantly. They would. Call it a compromise. It's not that I'm not saying it, it's just that I don't want to put those words there. That specific set of words there. Thank you. I'm glad that you get it, Tony. because I'm not really afraid of saying anything on this program, but I am aware, Steven Crowder has been shut down for literally almost no reason whatsoever. We have Facebook and Twitter actively saying that they've gotten rid of 1 million people between the two platforms alone. We've seen Amazon literally turn off Parler overnight in violation of contracts that expressly said they couldn't possibly do that. We have listened to politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, that have come out and said that people need to be punished for having views they don't like. We've listened to organizations like Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow and their leaders, Messiah Andrews, who goes by the name of Roderick, I think it's Roderick Glass, on Facebook, who are out there, and they are, Roderick Douglas on Facebook. Messiah Andrews goes by Roderick Douglas on Facebook, that they are out there and they are trying to punish people for speaking. So we have to fight against that. But we have to stay within the confines, because I don't own Facebook and I can't force Facebook to keep us on or to do that to YouTube or Twitter. So we have some limitations, which is sad. Because all I'm talking about is a political view, a commentary on facts that exist. And because I am talking about facts that exist, and I am asking you, I am pleading with you to consider those facts and come to whatever decision you want, and to actively disagree with me if you want, and to have a foundational discussion about that if you want, because I am asking you to think they hate this and they want to shut our channel down, and they are actively trying to mess with our channel and keep our subscribers down, and to deny people the access to the live stream, and to try and make sure that we are suppressed, which is why we're so actively trying to say, please subscribe, please spread the word, please see what we have done, if not live, after the fact, and make your own decision and make your own comments, whether you agree or disagree with us, because, we're big kids. We can handle it. And America deserves that opportunity. Mavis. Hello, Mavis. Happy Easter. Good to see you. She says, he created a new FB account. Oh. Are you talking about, I think Mavis is referencing Messiah Andrews, who is one of the leaders of the Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, otherwise known as PLOT, which is a radical, far-left progressive organization that is in New York State, as well as in other areas across the nation. They're kind of like a Tifa light. And he has used multiple names. Yes, I know he has I believe, Ron Glass alias on Facebook. He has a Roderick Douglas alias on Facebook. By the way, a lot of people don't realize he is a member of, he works for the New York State government. Although he opposes the New York State government and wants to shut that down. Yeah, so I do follow him. I am aware. He hates my guts. And he has tried to intimidate me before publicly. It doesn't work, but he tries. So yeah, I am aware of his multiple accounts, which is how he deceives people, because he has multiple accounts and he lies about who his personality is and who he is. And we've covered him on this program before. Not that he'll come on to the program, because he doesn't believe in free speech, to my experience and understanding. And he is a public figure, in case Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they're wondering about it and they want to attack me on it. He is a public figure, and I am speaking about public facts that are known and have been discussed many times by many news sources. So, and law enforcement as well. So, they can't hold that against me. I'm not outing him. It's already known. That being said, but I'm not focused on him, because he really doesn't deserve our attention, though he is desperate for it. And I would be happy to speak with him, because I really want to find out what he did in Rochester to get arrested for second-degree rioting. I would love to have that. And that was published by a Rochester newspaper, which we have covered. It is a fact that has been disclosed publicly, so I am not outing him. I am asking, I would like to know his point of view on what he did to get that arrest, which is a fact. Just saying. So we got 10 minutes left. And in the last 10 minutes, I think we should talk about the U.S. Capitol police officer that was killed by a crazy individual who rammed the temporary fortifications found in Washington, D.C., attacked police officers, law enforcement officers, and killed one, injured another. Michael Bowie mentions that Ayan Hirsi Ali called podcasts the best hope against the rise in censorship. I agree. It's one of the things. Anything that allows people to speak, not just in the United States, like we were just talking about in the United Kingdom. And I know there are people in France, and there are people in Germany, in Canada, in Mexico, in India. This program is seen by people on any given episode, any particular video, has been seen and is seen regularly in about 100 countries out of the 149 countries in the world right now. And I do believe it's because speech is important. To be able to say what you think is important. And when you don't, there is a problem. And it's always a problem when someone is silenced. Like this teacher, the high school student that we're speaking about in the free speech at colleges is important. Like we're talking about when we've seen and caught Biden lying to the American people about the elections in Georgia and the election law. It is important. And yes, Tony, the perpetrator of the attack against the U.S. Capitol police officer that we were just speaking about, as I understand and as the news has been reported, he is not, the suspect is not a member of BLM or Antifa. It has not been verified. Some people believe he is. It is known and it has been reported that he is a follower of the Nation of Islam, which is considered by many Muslims to be a radical Islamist organization and is considered an organization of hate by the United States government because of their position against gays and Jews and people who are Jewish. And it is a radical organization. Malcolm X said so himself. So that's one way to take that point of view. Now, let's think about this. One, I think part of the problem with this and why we saw this is what we've been talking about, that we have a recipe for self-destruction that is going on in our nation. The more that we have allowed groups like Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, BLM, Antifa, to go out, to burn down cities, to attack our property, to attack individuals, and to blame and to excuse themselves doing so on the backbone of, well, everything's racism. Everything is racism, and if you don't agree with me, you're a racist or a sexist or some kind of ist. The more we have allowed that to happen, the more we have festered more division, more separation, and more extremism. The more that we have allowed politics to invade our entertainment and to corrupt that entertainment, to allow them to lie to us through the medium of entertainment, provably lie. And I am saying, Rapinoe, the captain of the U.S. women's team, lied to the public by saying that she wasn't getting paid as much as men in men's soccer. That is a lie. It's a provable, absolute lie, and the courts called her out on it. And Joe Biden lied to American people when he continued that lie and said and repeated it and said the U.S. women's team are not getting paid as much. That is a lie. And that lie being injected into our sports is causing more separation of people and more extremism and more racism than anything else. And that is the problem. That is causing a self-destruction of the United States. And yes, Tony, I believe that is worse. It is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. And I don't care if the name behind it is Antifa, BLM, Nation of Islam, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, Citizen Action, Indivisible, or Indivisible New York, as they go by whatever region they're in, Democratic Socialists of America, especially the Ithaca chapter. It doesn't matter. They're all the same thing. They are poisoning our nation and especially our youth, corrupting the Constitution and our rights and freedoms for their political and material monetary gain, and that is destroying our nation. And we are exporting that corruption to other nations like the United Kingdom, forcing them to have to fight a battle that they shouldn't have to because it doesn't exist, as they have reported, as we just covered. And that's terrifying. What I take away from the attack in DC is that we have allowed these organizations to so corrupt freedom and to poison the minds of American citizens that there are people who are making the choice, that making this leap of logic, or illogic in this case, and coming up with the conclusion that the only answer they have, rather than the power of the people, both to vote and to guide our elected officials, that the only answer they have left is to commit wanton acts of violence. That is dangerous, and that is terrifying, and that's why we must speak out. That's why this show exists, because we must stop that. We must remind our elected officials and these political organizations, as they work their way into our entertainment, our sports, and try to work their way into our lives, we must remind them that we are individuals, we are Americans, and we are free, and they do not have such a power over us, and they will not silence us. They will not take our rights from us, whether it be the first, second, all of the amendments and the Constitution. They cannot take our freedoms from us because we will not give them away. And the only way that they can gain our freedoms is if we give them away. They will not take my freedom of speech, which is why I'm on this show every week at Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is why I speak to everyone around the world and invite them into this program every week, and we will continue to do so. And why we provide you with credible sources so that you can see this information, and we put the links in the description after the show so that you can read this through for yourself and understand the context to make sure that we have not missed the context at all, and that you can come to your own conclusion, because we believe in you. We believe you are smart enough, that you are capable enough, and that when given the opportunity to have the information, you will make the right decision more often than not. Because we believe that empowers you. Not that you are inferior, not that you are second class, not that you are incapable and need some elected official or some organization to hold your hand and tell you, spoon feed you, this is what you're going to know, this is what you're going to say, this is what you're going to do, because you can't do it on your own. I disagree with that. I reject that. I think that is insane and it is self-destructive. You may think I'm wrong, and that's okay. And as always, I say, if you think I'm wrong, tell me why. Don't tell me how you feel. Tell me why. Give me reasons. Don't go all Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and say, well, I morally feel like. I don't care. I have my own set of morals. I don't care. You can have yours. I have mine. I don't care about the morality that you want to espouse. I want to know about the facts. If I am factually incorrect in this, please correct me, because I'm giving you a factual understanding and conclusion, not a feeling. Because you don't care about my feelings, you have your own. I respect that. I respect you. I respect you enough to give you information, give you my understanding and my conclusions about that as we have this discussion, and to learn from you what you think as well. Let me ask you, which one you think is more respectful? Listening to you and having a respect for you and having a conversation where you may disagree with me, where you could possibly be offended or possibly offend me, is that more respectful? Or is it more respectful for me to tell you that you are inherently flawed and evil because you were born that way, and that you must be re-educated and punished because you have the wrong thoughts? Which one do you think is more respectful? Just a question. Now, we've been on for about 2.5 hours now. And I got to tell you, I love you all. Every single one. You know, it's Thanksgiving and people, I didn't expect anyone to be on the show today. And we've had Jason and Tony, Mike Bowie, Mavis. We've had Hot Chicks and Shauna. I love it. And I know some of you, and I know that some people, we've had a spectrum of people. Some of them, believe it or not, have Democrats. Some people who are watching the show are libertarians or Republicans. They have different points of view. They have different colors of skin and different religions they believe in. Some are male and female. You know what? I love you guys. I love this audience. And I love the fact that some of the people that are watching the show or will be watching the show because of the hours, difference in hours, are from overseas, across the pond, in various countries in Europe and around the world. You guys are wonderful. And I thank you for joining me, especially on Easter. Especially on Easter. You guys are so wonderful. And you are the gift that gives me power to do this every week and to keep going. And by the way, if you are in the Binghamton area on April 10th, and I know I'm saying this at the end of the show, I should have said it earlier, for my 53rd birthday, I will be cooking, I will be having a barbecue in front of the Oak Street Barber here in Binghamton, New York, on Oak Street, 65 Oak Street, and I will be having a cookout. I will make burgers and hot dogs and just give them out. That's my gift on my birthday, well, actually April 10th, a couple days after my birthday, to the public, just because. I'm not getting anything for it. I'm not running for any elected office. I'm going to do it just because I want to. Hopefully, you'll be able to join us. Folks, happy Easter. Thank you all for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope that we have more people who join us next Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that throughout the week you double check on the show and see some of the things we're doing. Keep an eye out for the April 13th conversation where I will be the featured speaker at Rutgers University talking about the Second Amendment and red flag laws. And until then, folks, I want you to be well. I'm off to the Belmar. Talk to you soon.